My name's Jessie Burton and my new novel is called The Muse, and it's about two women, one woman in 1960s London and another in 1930s Spain, and their stories and how this long-lost masterpiece of a painting connects them together. I did want to examine what it means to have a muse and what it means to be a muse, both in the positive and negative aspects. So there's a character in the book who one might argue practically harvests a man as her muse, because he sort of inspires her, and he's left feeling pretty drained by the experience and doesn't find it flattering or particularly edifying. My muses personally were, well, my interests, my passions, and that's, you know, in this book, the Spanish Civil War and London in the 60s with the Caribbean immigration and the world of art and creativity and the marketing of art as well. So there were these three things that interested me. When I started researching the 1930s section, when I was starting about the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War in July of 1936, what I wanted to do more than anything was to investigate or to portray what it's like to have civil war come to your doorstep and invade your private and your domestic sphere on a fairly banal level. Individuals finding within their own families or within their own villages that there was discord, and discord turning to hate, and hate turning to death, and, you know, families severed and families psychologically destroyed for generations after. And I was very interested in that, and I didn't want to paint a big sweeping political landscape. The one that drives the book, the one who is the sort of propulsive engine, is Adele Bastien, who is the woman in the 1960s who tells us the story through first person, and also, well, I don't want to give too much away, but has involvement in the way that the 30s section is told. Adele was always in my mind Trinidadian, or black, I suppose, is another description, although given what I've learned about the Trinidadian or the Caribbean experience in London now, even like thinking about how that word was used, and unexpected even to her, because she wasn't black when she was on her own island in her own country, which again was a very interesting thing for me to read about and understand, or try and understand. Adele is born in the 1940s. She's at school in the 1940s, and it's more English than the English. Public school style education, boys playing cricket, Princess Margaret posters on the wall. Having her come here and experience feeling that she should belong, and being told both insidiously and overtly that you don't, that you're not one of us, you're not a Londoner, psychologically must have been very alarming and disconcerting. That said, I don't think within the book I wanted to look at Adele solely through a racial prism. Adele's ethnicity, the colour of her skin, absolutely is a massive element of her identity, but I think it was incredibly important, and something that I wanted to honour is that she's also a woman. She's also someone with ambition. She wants to write. She also wants to buy makeup that suits her skin tone, and she can't find any. She falls in love. She has this strange boss. It's funny because I never really think of myself writing particularly politically. I had it in The Miniaturist as well. I was asked, you know, did you make all these deliberate choices, putting a gay man in there and a black man and a woman who wants to have a job? No, you know, these for me are just like responses to the world I see. When The Miniaturist became super successful and selling in all these countries, and, you know, we hit the 1 million copy mark, it was very surprising. It wasn't what I expected or anticipated. I just wanted to be published, and I didn't really think beyond what that meant. But at the time, because there was so much going on and there was a lot of interest in the book and me, I didn't really take stock of it. I didn't really understand perhaps what the effect on me was as both a sort of individual, as a person, and as a writer professionally. I think the Muse mutated through its writing process. What it was at the beginning was definitely not what it was by the end. And I do think it was written partially in response to what happened with The Miniaturist, in terms of what happens when something just becomes kind of out of your control, and yet you're still sort of you're the anchor of it, although you don't feel particularly anchored yourself. It's weird though, because I feel the miniaturist, it was more of a journey of exploration, and the muse feels more like something I know. Like I've offered something that's come from hard-earned experience of being published, being disseminated, being mass-consumed, casually owned. You know, all of those things happen to me, I feel. I think I can confidently say that now without feeling too guilty of that experience, because it was overwhelming. It was, you know, a blessing, but it was also came with a price. But I think running through it is this exploration of what it means to be a public artist and a private artist and a person somewhere in the middle of all of that.